everybody, how's it going? It's the Fuzz. So the second balance patch is here. This one is aimed to give the evil factions some love to help them compensate for the fact that all the good cards that were added were for the good factions. So we got a list of 14 cards that were pretty much just buffed across the board. All of these are buffs to existing cards, which is always nice since many of these cards were a little bit underused, and that definitely opens up some room for new kinds of gameplay with a lot of these cards. Anyways, I'm just gonna kick it right off. We got Fireball going back to 2 mana. Oh my god, I remember playing with a 2 mana Fireball back in the day. The card was absolutely insane, and it's going to be absolutely insane. A 2 mana Fireball is going to be an auto include in every Rage deck, and it's going to be completely insane in draft. If you're drafting Rage, see a Fireball, pick a Fireball, pretty much. I mean, I don't even care if you draft 7 Fireballs. You keep picking Fireballs, basically. Fia. So Fia's had an interesting redesign. She lost the Swift, but she gained +1 attack, and her ability can now target creatures as well. You have to pay 1 mana, but whatever. Overall, I think this is a very interesting buff, kind of. I think she's a much better as a 2-drop now because it's a 2-1 with range, so she can fight reasonably well against most other 2-drops. Kind of the same way the Dwarven Musketeer can. The ability is pretty interesting. Even if you deal 1 damage to the enemy, or any damage to the enemy, and she gets some energy, the effect is pretty handy. The fact that you can hit creatures now, if she stands on the board with a couple points of energy, she can be pretty nasty. But just by itself, the stats are good enough that it could be a solid 2-drop alongside the 2/3 Tortured Orc. Yeah, seems like a good card. And I think if I was going to play like a range, tempo, or mid-range deck, I would definitely put Fia in alongside the Tortured Orc. Yeah, those are probably the 2/2-drops you want to play. Certainly not Fireworker. We don't have to play Fireworker anymore. Oh my goodness. It used to be you played Fia and Fireworker because that's all you had. Anyways, I like this Fia quite a lot. Boiling Blood has been up to 2 aspects, but it now returns to your hand when the creature dies. So it's pretty much in line with things like Murder Instinct and Mantle of the Winds, etc. That's cool. I always like those cards. So having a Rage version of it is pretty cool. That said, I don't think the card is going to see any play in Constructed. These kinds of cards are really nice in Limited, but in Constructed, not quite. Although the advantage this one has over a lot of the other ones, it does scale with itself. So if you have 2 of them, you can put 2 of them on the same creature, and the creature will benefit, whereas a creature does not benefit from multiple Murder Instincts, really. It doesn't really benefit that much from multiple Mantles. Well, it gets a little faster, I guess. But with Boiling Blood, it certainly does. You could combo it with Soul Projection, buff a creature's attack and then Soul Project. Oh, that's a little gimmicky, so I wouldn't expect that. I think it's really cool. I'm going to enjoy playing it in draft. I'm going to enjoy playing Rage in draft, as I'm sure everyone will. And Boiling Blood seems like a solid card to pick up as a common. Cannonade. So the redesign for this one, it's not so much a redesign. Rather than shock the creature that's targeted by this, the creature with a target emblem takes double damage, which is actually interesting. I did test, and you can assign like full damage to the creature. So if I have a 4/4 and a 2/2 and you mark the 4/4, I can just assign all 4 damage to the 4/4, and that's it, right? So that makes it a little bit worse, but the fact that you can mark something does make it better because you can kind of manipulate what gets removed. Normally, if you played it against a 4/4 and a 2/2, it would do nothing, right? But now if you mark one of them, that one will die. If you mark the 2/2, then your opponent would have to assign the 4 damage to the 4/4 to save the 2/2. And if you mark the 4/4, your opponent, can only assign 4 damage, right? So he's going to have to just assign 4 damage to the 4/4 because he just goes 2 and 2. They're both going to die. That's cool. That's really neat. And it makes Cannonade a little bit in line with Arrow Barrage, where you have a little bit of control over what gets hit. Pretty cool. And of course, synergy with Flame Rune Warrior, because you can Flame Rune something ahead of time. And then with Cannonade, it's going to get quite a lot of value. I'm not saying it's going to be like the new meta or anything, but Flame Rune Warrior is already like a decent card, and you suddenly run Cannonade and Flame Rune Warrior. Yeah, could be something. Overall, pretty nice change. It's going to be really good in Limited. And the last card for Rage's Black Market, it gives you a combined cost of 5 instead of previously it was 4. It means that if you have a deck where nothing costs more than 2, other than Black Market, you can reliably get 3 cards from this. That's pretty good, actually. And of course, there is the bummer that it doesn't work out with Shrines very well. As I understand it, Shrines are not even included, which is weird because according to the way Diogen works, Shrines are considered 0-cost cards, right? So they should be included. I don't know. It's going to be worth experimenting with. For an aggressive deck that's going to run a lot of small cards, sure, you're going to want to run this for extra card draw. That being said, with the improvement to cards like Suffocate, well, the redesign, complete redesign of that card, aggressive decks might not have a good time, actually, I think. Maybe except zombies. Zombies might, because Suffocate is a card that really benefits zombies and doesn't hurt them, unlike everyone else. And in that case, maybe you splash Corruption with Rage, so you get access to Black Market. But of course, the downside is you lose out on your Consume Spirit synergy and your Tombs synergy, so you might not do that. I expect to see people try this out, and it's up in the air whether it ends up being useful or not for the card draw. It might be. I mean, if you get 2 cards with it, it's not like awful. It's not great, honestly. And if you have a chance to get 3, that's pretty good. It's gonna depend on how many 3-cost cards you have, but it's a cool change. And to think, this used to be a 4-mana card that gave you a total cost of 4. Black Market has come a long way. Assassin's Guild, they just changed the cost to 2 from 3. Seems totally fair. At 3, it was like way too much mana, even though it's really good with Assassin, because if you use it with a deadly creature, it'll kill the target. But at 3 mana was just too much, and the minion has plenty of removal. I still think it's not going to see any play because you just don't need it. That's why. But at 2, it's like reasonable. I don't know how you pronounce this. Mercenary. They changed it to be like a golem. Golem with an interesting effect, where if it's sacrificed, you draw a card. There's not very many ways to sacrifice it, because you can't use it with Stronghold Metropolis anymore because it's a level 2 card. This is probably why they did it this way. It could work with the Enoch sacrifice deck. You know, because it's a 1-mana card, it's better than it was, because a 2-aspect 1 mana is better than 1 mana 1 aspect 2 mana. Just the way the Golem tends to get played, because you can just push out a lot of these 1-mana cards. But as I was saying with the Black Market, aggro that's not zombies might have a hard time actually surviving against Suffocate. Possibly. That remains to be seen. So mostly this card will be played in like that Enoch sacrifice deck with Atriska and all that other stuff, but I don't really think it's going to be that good. It's cool. I mean, it was a completely useless card. It was just there because Vats could spawn it, right? Yeah. And, you know, then they took away the ability for Vats to spawn them because it was pretty OP, and then it just was left in the game as like a pointless card. But now, maybe you played... It is still a soldier. It's a 1-mana soldier. Maybe soldiers, if they ever become a thing, could eventually consider it. They already have natural synergy with Dominion thanks to Devious Plot and Stronghold. Mistress of Shadows. So this card, they basically added a pretty significant effect on top of it. Now, when a player gains control of her, which is going to be your opponent first when you play her, and then you when you get her back, the player has to kill one of their... basically assassinate one of their own creatures, right? So that's pretty big, actually. I would say this is a significant buff, because the problem with the Mistress was that if you played it against an aggressive board, you just died sooner, because you just gave your opponent a free 3 damage hit. But now, when you play her, you're gonna kill something, probably. Like, you play her, you kill their 2-drop. Yeah, they get this, and they do 3 damage to you, but they were probably gonna do 2 damage or something anyways. And you drew a card, and you kill their guy, and then you're gonna get this card. Seems like it has some potential. But, again, it's all gonna depend on how, if at all, aggressive decks can play. if control decks suddenly start taking over because they got cards like Suffocate, which can sweep the board very efficiently in addition to Cataclysm. But I like this Mistress. The previous Mistress, it was funny because everyone was saying it's like one of the worst cards in the game, and yeah, the funny thing about Mistress was it was decent on turn 3, and it was absolutely awful every other time, because it was hard to set up a position where your opponent couldn't use the Mistress against you to like trade off efficiently, and you know, the card you drew wouldn't matter because the Mistress would just ended up doing more damage to you because yeah, she could just attack something, and yeah, it was a bit of an issue. With this effect, she's a bit more interesting. I think she would be a really solid turn 3 play for like a mid-range deck because you can kill something immediately, get a card, and then get board control with her right away. You're gonna have to play around with this one, but I think it has a little bit of potential. But that's because I just like cards like this, and I thought the previous Mistress had potential and ended up being complete trash. I don't think this one is trash, but it's entirely possible it doesn't see play, but it seems like it should. But if aggro gets kicked out of the meta, for instance, then this won't be needed. But maybe it'll be needed. We'll see. Murderous Chieftain gains a new ability. When he destroys a creature, you draw a card. Murderous Chieftain was nowhere on the radar to be played in anything. Even if you're going to play that Enoch sacrifice deck, you would sooner run Otriska just because Otriska was 2 aspects. So you didn't have to go 3 aspects. You didn't want to anyways, so yeah, Murderous Chieftain is a cool card, but just doesn't really fit anywhere. Like, it's hard to actually sacrifice 2 creatures to play him. And it's probably not worth the 2 mana savings. Yeah, you could sack 2 of those mercenaries and you draw 2 cards. But, I mean, who are we kidding, right? I think it's cool, but I don't expect this to make enough of a difference where you suddenly play Murderous Chieftain. If you really are looking for like a Dominion beat stick, you've got the Minotaur, right? Which can come down a lot sooner and has a much less annoying downside. In that, you know, you can just play it and you don't have to sacrifice anything, and it's 1 less mana and 1 less aspect basically if you consider this a 3 aspect 4 mana card, because it's gonna be tough to sack 2 things. I think maybe Chieftain is waiting for like an expansion where we get a few cards that really benefit from dying, kind of the same way the Death Curse Shaman does, kind of. In that case, maybe Murderous Chieftain makes a triumphant return. Would be cool. It's a rare, so it's not going to matter that much for limited. Drella's only change is that you will now pay 2 mana instead of 3. Drella hasn't seen any play in a very long time, so is this enough to make her come back? I don't think so, because it's just, this is generally not how Spellweaver is played. Control decks don't play like a creature like this and just hold the board forever, because if they can hold the board, then they've already won, right? And if it's control v control, it's not going to matter that much. Like, Drella looks like a solid card, right? And if you put it into your deck, it probably would be okay, honestly. Like, probably would be totally fine. So, depending on how things roll out, it may very well turn out that some deck just splashes Dominion, goes 3 aspects, and tosses in a few Drellas and maybe even Prinhas. Just because they're really good value cards. But then you also have to think, well, is 1 turn heal going to be a thing? Is other heal decks, are all those decks going to be a thing? Is like Ramp, Silencer going to be a thing? Still, I mean, nothing is really changing to make it go away. If anything, it's more likely to be the case because we are getting more efficient removal, which favors control decks. So, yeah, we'll see. It's not that big of a change to Drella. So if Drella was not on the radar to be played, it probably still isn't. But if you get her in limited, she's going to be quite insane. Mausoleum, now back to 1 mana. This was the original cost, which I think was the correct cost. They made it 2. I don't know if it was by mistake. When they made the first big update after the first expansion, they improved the other skill shrine, but they made this one 2 mana, which made it totally unplayable, which was a shame because I thought it was the only good one. At 1 mana, the effect is solid, actually. I mean, -1 attack, health, and speed for 1 mana. Yeah, could work. I could see zombies playing this instead of the spawn a zombie when something dies shrine. It gives them more ways to affect the board and slow down enemy creatures. Yeah, looks good. I'm looking forward to trying this out in zombies. Word of Pain, just like Fireball, it went to 2 mana. This was my suggestion because I just thought it was not better than Word of Fire, yet it cost more. A 2-mana Word of Pain, I think, is starting to look pretty decent. Even if you just put down 1 weakness emblem and you draw a card, it's not that bad, really, for 2 mana. If you put down 2 weakness emblems, it's starting to look really good. And now, I think if you're playing a Mana Corruption deck, you could seriously consider Word of Pain, because you could get a lot of value for it very efficiently along with Consume Spirit. If you are fighting other aggressive decks, it's great. You can like just severely weaken a lot of their cards. And if you're facing that Valor shenanigans, you can counter their emblems, and you can definitely counter the Sentinel. Although Sentinel being 3 aspects now, maybe you don't need to. Needless to say, I expect that if zombies become a thing because of Suffocate, you would probably play Word of Pain along with Noxious and Consume and Suffocate. Well, the numbers are still up to debate, but yeah, it seems like a decent card. Reminds me of the old Word of Vigor, which was the same effect, but it put a Might emblem on a friendly creature, and otherwise it was the same. You could say, well, isn't this just as powerful? Well, the main difference is that if you buff a creature and then you get a free kill, you get to keep the buff. Like, the point was you played an Elf Warrior, then you buffed it with Word of Vigor to a 3/3, you killed something for free, and you still had a 3/3. That was a big deal. With Word of Pain, you know, you weaken something, you kill it, you don't get to keep the buff. But on the other hand, you can use it to just preemptively weaken a few enemy creatures to just take less damage. So I think Word of Pain is gonna be a pretty good card, and I expect to see it in Corruption decks, mostly Mana Corruption. Totem of Forsaken Thoughts. So the redesign on this one is now, rather than just adding the card to your hand, you can play... Actually, you have to. I tested this, and there does not seem to be the option to not play it, so that may be an oversight. You play a Corruption spell that costs 2 or less. By the way, this includes any spell, including curses, so it works with Haunt, for instance. So this is interesting because it opens up the way for a different Shaman deck. The reason this card was awful in the past was because they just weren't... You could never play enough Corruption spells to make it even remotely decent. Like, you had Noxious Fumes and, like, Reanimate. That's it. So you had 8 things you could possibly put into your hand. So it was just so much worse than Totem of Legends. But now that you are playing the spell instead of just putting it into your hand, it's a big difference, because if you just get a free Noxious Fumes or the new 2-mana Word of Pain, or even Haunt, yeah, it could help you, because it can definitely give you that edge against aggro, which is where Shamans are the weakest. Shamans always struggle with aggro, but they're getting some tools to help with that. 2-mana Fireball, pretty nice. New and improved Word of Pain, pretty nice. And now maybe you run this totem instead of the Totem of Tortures, and then you just run all Corruption spells, and yeah, and you play Totem, and then when you play a Shaman, you hope to hit one of those spells. I mean, you could run Noxious Fumes, you could run Word of Pain, and let's say Haunt. That's 12 Corruption spells. So if you look at top 4, you have pretty good odds of hitting one, and if you do, and you get to play it for free, that's huge, right? Because you can just use it to kill something immediately. If you don't need to do it, then you just don't activate it, but that's definitely worth trying out. And again, considering the overall improvements to Rage and Corruption in general, maybe Shamans are going to become a thing. Like Suffocate gives you like a board clear. Maybe you don't have to play Advanced Zash anymore because you have a board clear available, and Shamans can get pretty decent card draw going thanks to Totem of Legends. Yeah, it's definitely another deck that's worth trying out. Could be quite competitive. And the last card, of course, the most exciting card, Suffocate. This has been changed to be 4 mana instead of 3. That seems completely fair. I think a 3-mana Suffocate is absolutely insane. Even a 4-mana Suffocate is really, really good. They made it rare so that you can't get it in limited very much. Good. Because I don't want to see a deck with like 3 copies of this in limited. No thank you. No thank you. Anyways, if you look at this card, it will kill most 3-speed creatures in the game. It'll kill all the small 2-speed creatures. So it kills a lot of stuff. And zombies mostly have 1 speed. Or basically almost all the zombies can survive this. So you drop a Suffocate, you kind of clear the way. This basically is the card that solves the zombies' biggest problem, is that the zombies just had no good answer to like 3-speed elf barrage, because the elves could just ignore the zombies and go face and only defend or trade if they needed to, but the zombies never had any way to change that. So yeah, with Suffocate, you've got a way to punish them. This will kill all the annoying ass little 3-speed elves. It'll just like wipe a deck like soldiers. Oh my goodness. And again, your zombies are pretty much unaffected. Zombie Legionnaires survive this. Power Creep Ghoul survives this. Abhorrent, the other ghoul, the Insatiable Ghoul survives this. Zombie Giant, obviously. Hydra? I don't think you're really gonna run Hydra. I think Zombie Giant is enough, if you even run Zombie Giant at all. Dread Knight. I mean, you'd probably sooner run Dread Knight than Hydra anyways. And then just, you know, put big bodies on the board, and you've got Tombs, and you've got Heartsford, and just Suffocate. To, like, if you get in trouble on the board, just sweep the board. Most of your creatures won't die. Most of theirs will die. Good stuff. And this deck could also be a nice punish against control decks trying to use Suffocate, because their stuff won't die. That being said, I am concerned about that cards like this make Reflector like insane, because if you reflect Suffocate, it's pretty much Cataclysm for most, like very few things can survive double Suffocate. Pretty much anything with 3 speed and higher instantly dies. Most things with 2 speed die, and only some 1 speed things survive, so that's gonna be nasty. Yes, it's expensive, especially with Reflector being more expensive. You know what? That doesn't stop people from trying, so I imagine people will still try. My hope is that 1-turn heal is now inconsistent enough that it's deemed not good enough to run, and so we won't see it very much, because those decks are not much fun to play at all, and they love cards like these because you clear the board, right? Anyways, that's it for the cards. Pretty good. Happy with all of these. Sadly, Hydra is still 5 mana, but that's okay. That's not a big deal. A lot of spells got improved, so a lot of improvements to removal, which is good. So now we're starting to see the theme with the good guys are about big creatures and protecting them and buffing them. Bad guys are about